Now that we implemented this image functionality, let's come back to this administration area. We get this out of the box, but that also means that we got its look and its behavior out of the box. And for the most part, that works, and that's absolutely fine. But you might want to customize this area and what's showing up there. Now, I will say it right away, there are many things you can customize here. You can customize basically everything, including the styles. Here I got this dark mode out of the box. You can change everything, what shows up where, which menu items you have, and so on. And the official docs are the best place to learn about all of that, because you could create a course just about that, but I'm not sure if that would be too interesting. Now, I do dive a bit deeper into that in my complete guide, but I also want to show you some interesting settings, some settings and features which you will probably use quite a bit here now. And for that, let's go back to this admin py file where we registered our meetup model. By registering a model here in this admin file, we make sure that we can manage this model and its instances, so the records in the database, through this administration area. But we can also fine-tune how things show up here and how we can manage data. And let's start with what we see here. At the moment, for the meetups I created, I see meetup object 1 here. Now that's not too helpful if we're honest. It would probably be nicer to see the title here or something like this. And you can tweak such things. Now for one, you can go to the models file and then actually change how that model or how an instance based on that class is represented if it's printed as a string, which is what happens here. Django just calls the stir method on our instance and then prints the result here. And we can override this method by defining our own stir method here inside of the class. This double underscore stir double underscore method is a default method which we can add in any Python class to control what's showing up or what we get as a result if we need this instance as a string. And here you can then return whichever string you want. And for example, we could return a f string here, so a formatted string, and output self.title, and then maybe a dash, and output self.slug or something like this. And if I save that and I then reload this page, now I see this output, which is a bit more meaningful. But that's not all we can do. We can also add multiple columns here instead of just having one string that represents the instance, which then describes our model and our stored data here in even greater detail. And that's what we do in this admin py file. Here in this file, we can create a class and we can name it meetup admin, though that name is up to you. But the important thing is that this class has to inherit from the admin model admin class, which is provided by Django. And then here we can control how our meetups should be presented in the admin area and how they should behave here. And for example, we can add the list display property here, because we inherit from model admin, and set this to a tuple. And then here we can set the different fields which we have in our model class that should show up as columns on this screen. So for example, here we could add the title and maybe the slug, like this. Then we just have to tell Django that this admin class is used to configure the admin model in the admin area, and we do that by registering our meetup with a second argument where we point at the admin class we want to use for defining the configuration for this model in the admin area, like this. And if we do that and save everything and I reload, now we got 2 columns here. And you can add all your model fields as columns. So whatever you defined as a field here in your model, you can add it as a column here with list display. Now we could even make our models filterable. so that if we have multiple instances of the meetup model, multiple records, we can easily filter for them because this admin area, which we get by Django, has built-in filter capabilities. For that, to unlock those capabilities, we just have to add list filter as a property and then provide a tuple of values by which we want to be able to filter. For example, again, the title maybe. And then if we do this, let's make it a tuple by adding a comma. If we do this, then if I reload, we get this filter box now. It's added automatically because now we added this list filter setting here, so to say. And here we can now filter by title and therefore make sure that we only view the meetups we want to see. Of course, filtering by title might not make too much sense. Filtering by location might be better, but that's something I'll come back to later once we did add a location to our model here. Now, there's one other thing I'd like to tweak here. When we add a new meetup, we currently have to enter the title, that makes sense, but also the slug. And of course, it's easy to mess something up there. It would be great if that slug would be auto-generated based on the title. And that is such a common requirement that Django has built-in support for it. We can add a pre-populated fields setting or property to this meetup admin class, and then here set a dictionary as a value where we point at the different model fields which we want to pre-populate based on some other value. So if I want to pre-populate the slug field based on the title, I can do this by adding slug as a key here in the dictionary. And as a value, I add a tuple where I list all the fields that will be concatenated and transformed together to build a slug. In my case, just the title field, so just title as a string. And then with that, if you do this, you will notice that now if I type a second meetup here, the slug gets auto-populated. And that's, of course, again, super useful. And please note, by the way, that Django automatically knew how to generate such a slug because we told it to pre-populate the slug field, and Django then has a look at our model, sees that this is of type slug field, and then automatically infers the correct way of generating such a slug. So that's really a lot of smart functionality built in. And of course, it should be needless to say that with those rich configuration options I showed you briefly here, you can configure everything, and you can also override how things are pre-populated, but the default works pretty well for us here. And now with that, we tweaked the admin area a little bit, and we make sure that we now have an easier way when it comes to working with our data there, and when it comes to understanding our data and adding our data there.